So we got the new Warlords Ruin dungeon, and it honestly might be the best dungeon, at least in terms of gameplay wise, running through it, fighting all 3 bosses. There's no puzzle encounters, short transitions, the list goes on. However, the only true negative to this dungeon, the only knock that it has on it, is the fact that its loot isn't really the most jaw-dropping, unless you consider a caster frame sword jaw-dropping, which, come on now, bro, let's not do that. And there's no insane crazy weapon that people are going to be spending hours to farm for, such as the envious bait and switch Cold Comfort from Ghosts of the Deep. But we're not here to talk about Ghosts of the Deep. If I had to actually pick one good weapon out of this entire loot pool, believe it or not, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually going to say that the legendary sidearm in this dungeon is the best weapon, at least for PvE, from this dungeon. The Indebted Kindness legendary sidearm is a first of its kind, as this sidearm is, first of all, it's a special ammo using sidearm. Don't have very many of those in the game now, do we? We have what, Forerunner, the new dungeon exotic, and then this one, at least the ones I can name on the top of my head, as the Indebted Kindness is a rocket assisted frame. Sidearm fires self-propelled rocket ammunition. Projectiles explode on impact for high damage. And yes, you can definitely feel that extra oomph that this gun is packing, that extra punch that this gun is packing, even though we're not playing zombies. Although I bet if you threw this bad boy in the back a punch, it'd be even better. I'm just kidding. So this ARC legendary special ammo using sidearm is really ammo efficient at what it can be doing, as it will really run through any low tier enemy, and it can even shoot through some tankier orange bar enemies throughout PvE, which is pretty useful. Now, generally when I make a weapon review video, I like to throw up the weapon's perk pool on screen. However, I actually can't do that because the perk pool isn't fully available to us at this very moment. You can't pull it up on LightGG or D2 Foundry for that matter. So I'm going to just tell you some of the main perks that I've seen on this weapon that are actually pretty darn good and worth using. Now, of course, we'll start off in the third column, and hear me out. Because this weapon has rocket ammunition and the bullets actually have a travel time, maybe something like Impulse Amplifier might not be a terrible option. At least worth considering looking at if you do get this perk to drop for you on this weapon while you're farming for it. Which, by the way, if you do want to farm for this weapon, the first boss in the Warlords Ruin dungeon drops it, which is pretty awesome because that boss can easily be one-phased, even on solo. Although you kind of have to be in the skill gap for that one using Banner of War and a Navigator grapple point. But easily in a fire team, you guys can farm for this Indebted Kindness rocket sidearm. Very fast, easy one-phaseable boss, especially with a full fire team. Also, if you want to skip the little cage puzzle after you beat this boss, you can to orbit and it'll be sent to your postmaster. Although, keep in mind that the dungeon is having some bugs where if you like change character while you're in there or try to load up a different activity while you're in the dungeon, your game will crash. Bungie's already acknowledged this on Twitter, but keep that in mind. Kind of annoying to deal with. Now, if you don't want to use Impulse Amplifier, I got 2 other perks in the third column that I know this weapon drops with, as I've had them both drop for me on multiple copies of the weapon. And that is the good old tried and true special weapon perk of Lead from Gold, as this will allow you to pick up special ammo, rather receive special ammo whenever you pick up a heavy brick. A good old tried and true classic on any special weapon, and it is on this special ammo sidearm as well. Now, I do want to let you know about a new perk that is on this weapon, and that will actually do it some justice, help it out a bit. And it's on the sidearm that I'm using in the background gameplay. The perk that I'm talking about is called Beacon Rounds. Now, Beacon Rounds, what they do is that final blows with this weapon grant your projectiles tracking. Dealing further damage extends the duration, which means after a final blow with this bad boy, your mini rockets are going to be tracking towards their target, which can be very useful, especially when using this weapon at a distance. It can just help you out, be a quality of life perk, and a pretty decent perk overall. Not saying it's groundbreaking, but it's definitely helpful. Now, in the fourth column, there are 3 perks that I know for a fact are in here, although one of them is Adagio, so I don't really want to recommend that perk. The actual 2 decent PvE perks in the fourth column are going to be your good old Surrounded, which is a pretty monster damage buff. It's like 40% when it is procced. Very, very strong, although it is very niche to have procced. And then the perk in the fourth column that I think most people are going to use is voltshot. This weapon reloads really fast and it can easily knock down any sort of trash tier mob in one shot, meaning it is very quick and easy to proc voltshot on this weapon. And if you're by yourself, you need to activate a form of jolt and you're not on an arc hunter, this could be a very good weapon. It might even replace the iterative loop for this role. That's generally what most people would use that fusion rifle for, is to put a form of jolt on a boss if they couldn't do it some other way. I know jolt got nerfed, but still having an enemy jolted is still useful to have, especially if you are in a solo dungeon, a low man. I just want to let you guys know about it, and it is pretty darn good. The roll on mine that I like using that you're seeing in the background gameplay has beacon rounds and voltshot, and it has a blast radius masterwork, although for this type of weapon you're definitely going to want to have a velocity masterwork. Now its origin trait sundering is what helps it reload really fast, as destroying vehicles and constructs grants this weapon bonus reload speed and charge rate. Constructs include barricades, turrets, stasis crystals, and other objects created in the field. You'll actually proc this origin trait more often than you would think, so just keep that in mind. Now, I was a little bit curious just to see how this weapon would do in a damage scenario, so for kicks, I decided to only use this special sidearm against the first boss of the Warlord's Ruined Dungeon, aka the boss where you can farm this weapon. And keep in mind, by itself, it did, I mean, it's a special sidearm, like, it did okay. It did about 500,000 damage, which, hey man, we'll take, because you're generally not just going to be sitting there shooting this thing only during a damage phase, right? Like I said, most people are probably going to use this as another way to get jolt on a target if they can't do it in some other way. Although you could definitely use this thing in like a damage rotation, as it is so easy to proc voltshot on this weapon, especially if you are in a longer damage phase in which you could proc voltshot multiple times. It could definitely help out and kick some butt, as you would just pop an ad, reload it, pop the boss. You don't have to worry about like a charge time. You don't have to worry about missing a grenade launcher shot. And if you have beacon rounds, it just makes it even easier. Also, total side note, but as you can see in the background gameplay, I used Dragon's Breath in my solo damage rotation. It did not have the catalyst in this footage, and I just want to let you know that the target that you shoot with the Dragon's Breath, whenever that target ignites twice, that's when the Dragon's Breath will be auto reloaded. In case you want to use this thing in a rotation without the catalyst, just wait for the boss to ignite twice and swap back to your Dragon's Breath and shoot it again. The sidearm definitely helped out a lot with its voltshot capabilities, and I figured I would at least include this footage for you guys. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the new Indebted Kindness Special Ammo Energy sidearm down in the comments below, as I think this is probably the best piece of loot, at least PvE wise, from this new dungeon. Thank you so much for watching the video. You guys be safe, take care, and we'll see you in the next one. Adios.